Hello to all my city mice and country mice and suburban mice. Normally I would say, it's been a minute, but it hasn't. I'm back. Like 2 or 3 days later from my last upload to make up for my very infrequent posting schedule recently. It's also Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada. So, I just thought, what am I grateful for? Bionicles. Today's review is on the last Glatorian, which is Skrall. So, before jumping into the figure, I figured we could just have a short recap of the Glatorian. Should have done this probably on the first one rather than the last, but who cares? So, the idea of the Glatorian, I believe, were on this desert planet of Barra Magna. There was kind of different villages, like elemental tribes, and they kind of fought in a common gladiator arena type place, like in the middle of the planet. And the tribe's best soldiers, best gladiators, so to speak, would be the ones to represent them and fight against each other, and the winners would win like different resources because Barra Magna was quite barren, and I think the tribes were kind of struggling a bit, so they had to have this system to try to have there be some competition in order to divvy up what they had. So Gresh, Strack, Malum, and Terex, the water, fire, kind of jungle, and ice Glatorian are all prime examples of this. They were like a fighter of their own respective village, a Glatorian. The Vorox was kind of a weird exception because, as I mentioned in that review, they were just a more animalistic species that I don't really think actually fought in the arenas or anything. They had a Thornax launcher and everything just so they were on brand physically, like toy line wise with the other five, but really didn't actually make sense for them to have that because I think they were just like off in the desert. And Skrall is kind of in between that because similar to the Vorox, Skrall is the whole tribe of like the rock / black Glatorian. So it's not the name of an individual fighter. This is more so just representing his entire village. But they did fight in the arenas. They were sophisticated enough to battle other Glatorian. They weren't just animals. The one other thing about Skrall is that if you can't really tell by looking at him right off the bat, these were like the villains of the line as well. So even though you'd think like, how did they do villains in 2009 if everyone's just gladiators fighting against each other? Well, let's just say that the Skrall, actually I don't really know what they did. I think there was like a battle where the rest of the Skrall invaded the entire arena and like totally, took things over unfairly. That sort of vibe. Some bad dudes here. So anyways, that's who we're taking a look at today. Get ready. Alrighty. So I was going to try to kind of contain my opinion on Skrall until we got into like the end of the video, but I'm probably not going to be able to do that. I'm a really big fan of this figure. You can even see my arms flailing around as I talk in the reflection of the poster. Let's jump into the feet. You can also see that I'm going back to my old school style of just recording audio and video at the same time because I think that's kind of more fun. Anyways, we have the claw feet. I don't really know how best to describe them. They're not like the giant Paraka feet that the Vorox had, but I do like this foot design. Nothing too much to say about it. The life counter for this figure, like the Vorox again, does happen to be on the foot. That's probably why they picked it, because they needed to make sure to have a foot mold that does have some open hole pins to accommodate that. Legs aren't anything crazy. Got the very standard kind of Toa Metru style limb armor that I'm realizing a lot of the Glatorian had for their legs and arms. And then you get the same armor as the Vorox in pure black. So I was a big fan of this armor in that video. I think it's very unique. It was hardly used in all of Bionicle. I'm pretty sure it was new to 2009. I really like the texture of the plastic, the way there's glossy parts and kind of matte, grainy, gritty parts. For mock building, I think it's really interesting that we get a axle going that way, perpendicular to 2 pinholes. Overall, not to nerd out too much, but really am a big fan of this armor. Moving up into the chest, you get another piece of that armor. And the chest design itself is really, really great. We've had some chest designs lately where they kind of tried too hard, like with Gresh. They didn't try enough and there was no armor at all. Skrall is trying pretty hard here, and I think it's working. Like, it is just strong all around. You get a good armor piece, so there's nothing like too empty going on. And then kind of like Strack, the ice guy, you get a totally new, interesting... Oh, let me focus that. You get this super interesting, like, horizontal 90-degree action going on with that gray right angle piece. So what's going on here is that you have the classic hip piece, the gray is attached to that, and then the torso piece is completely attached at a 90-degree angle. It's going up that way. So it's, you know, Strack kind of did the same thing, but his entire chest unit was at a 45-degree angle to give him a really hunchback look. They're doing a similar thing with the Skrall here, but keeping it completely vertical and horizontal. And I'm just overall a really big fan of it. It's super unique to do this. You get an armor on the front still. And you know, even things like how the mask integrates into that weird horizontal chest piece, because he has such a long mask, so it kind of fits really well actually, how it goes down the length of that. Just overall, I think this chest piece is a really smashing success. We can jump right into the head because, as we mentioned, it has some good synergy with the chest design, and I think that was all very intentional. As you can see here, his head is very long.
Trying to get the arm out of the way. So when you kind of think about it that way, it really makes sense how it complements that angular chest build. I kind of really like the shapes that are going on here and the silhouette that he's given. It's very, you know, I don't know, it's very unique. But
anyways, the mask itself is a pretty good mask. I've been kind of tough on some of the Glatorian's masks so far, and it's funny that I like Skrall so much, because I think it's actually one of the only ones that's not dual tone. It's just pure black, but I love the sculpting on this thing so much. As you can kind of see, hopefully, there's not like a single boring part on this. It's very like rocky. There's lots of these kind of different like slates going on. He looks very evil, just like personality wise. I think they nailed the eyes, but there's just so much detail on this thing. There's like so many layers of sculpting and negative space going on and just texture. I think it's a really great mask. If this thing did have some like gradient dual color printing going on, like a black into a red or something, oh my god, it would have been game over. But even without it, I think it's very nice. Moving into the arms, again, I think they're pretty strong because we saw this piece in the stars, but I think before that they were introduced in 2009 here, and they are sick as hell, for lack of a better word. They're blade pieces, they're most definitely weapon pieces, but as you can see, they're simply connected with not much difficulty to the arm, so no problem turning them into armor there. And it's just a really sick piece. Again, there's so much, if we can get it to focus, there's so much detail going on in that mold, and this is a dual color piece as well. I think they're really sick, and when used as armor, as they are on Skrall, they just keep adding to his overall personality, his very angular, evil look. They're really crazy. They do a lot for this guy. They're awesome. Like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? I don't know. Now, to get into the weapons, guys, I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like a broken record. I think this stuff is pretty awesome. You get one of the most custom custom Thornax launcher slash other weapon combos here. We were talking on Gresh how it's like, oh, it's cool that the Thornax launcher is kind of a separate gun on top of his blade. I like when Thornax launchers are integrated into the weapon itself, kind of like Terex as well. This is a crazy example of that. You get a nice black, I love this blade piece, on the back of his hand to kind of create a hilt. And then you get like almost a little bit of a complex build here with some different axles, some Technic connectors. The Thornax launcher is like on a hand socket piece right there. And then you get a third one of these crazy blade armor pieces sticking out of that. So it just creates this wicked kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. It's kind of like a staff or a sword with the launcher on it. It's so hard. And the other weapon, they could have I think they could have had a weapon like that and not even given him something else because it's just such a strong weapon. Instead, they give him an equally cool, unique weapon. You get this shield. Haven't seen anything like this in Bionicle, I don't think, up until this point. Just a wicked singular piece shield design, dual color printing on it. Very similar to the helmet. If you can see past the red, the black itself is very like textured with all those different plates, giving it a very not monotonous feeling. Like there's just a lot of detail going on. And then the red itself is sick as hell. It's like this maze pattern. You get blades on the outside. You're like, okay, why does that look like a buzzsaw? It's because this bitch spins with ease because they used a tan Technic piece, which to nerd out, I think were like hairs thinner than the blue ones or something, so they're often used for looser connection points. Weapons overall in Skrall get a big double thumbs up for me. So the last thing to mention on Skrall is color. In my last Gresh review, we kind of talked about how most Bionicles have kind of a gray or a black piece or color for pieces such as their limbs, you know, ankles. That's a bad exception because they actually use dark green. But a lot of these kind of open socket pieces that aren't the primary, like armor or mask or really identifiable pieces, are this neutral color to kind of, you know, allow the other colors to pop. For example, Strack, if we look at him, actually didn't have this at all. He was colorful the entire time, which is something I really appreciate as well. His in-between colors were all various shades of dark and light blue, and he still had the white as the primary. Skrall introduces another kind of exception to this mindset, which is because he is black, what is the accent color going to be? It's probably not also going to be black because he'd be completely monochrome. They have done gray in the past before, and I usually don't like that because it's just a very boring grayscale build. So they did, which is my favorite method, which is pretty much reversing the colors. He does have a very obvious bright color, which is the red, but the black is the primary color used for things like armor and mask and major pieces. I just think this is such a sick color scheme because you don't miss out on any of the fun vibrance, but he also just looks fucking badass. The only complaint I have on a color choice is that I think here there's a bit too much red going in on the staff. I do like that his hands are red, but then they also picked the red kind of Thornax launcher mount and a red thing here. I think they would have benefited from making the entire weapon black to make his red hand kind of stand out, and you actually can see that it's holding this weapon because it gets a little muddied around here. That's a super minor complaint. Overall, I like that there's a good amount of red on this guy. It makes him very vibrant, but black is obviously still the primary color. So I realized that the way I was talking about Skrall probably makes him feel like a 10. And while I do really like him, there is one kind of very unfair critique that I do have against him. And that is that he is not a large size set. He is just a medium canister set, as you would kind of call them, you know, this 40 to 60 range piece set that most Bionicles fell into. My favorite Bionicles are the large sets, things like battle vehicles, Titan builds, anything like that, because one of my favorite aspects is build complexity and seeing like clever, complicated builds. Those are my favorites. So I do think that Skrall is my favorite of the Glatorian easily. I think he does take the #1 place. And for that reason, I think he's going to be our first above 8. I'm feeling an 8.4. 4. If you live in Canada, enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend. Or likely by the time I'm posting this, I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving weekend. If you don't live in Canada, I hope you had a lovely fall weekend. And if you live in the southern hemisphere, where fall might not really be that fall-like, I hope you had a lovely weekend. And if you work on weekends, I still hope you had a lovely weekend and got your bag. I'll see you next time for another 2009 review. I'm not actually sure what we're doing yet. We could skip to the little dudes. We could go to the Glatorian Legends. We could do some big size sets. This might actually be a good time to genuinely leave a comment below and tell me what you want to see, because we're officially done the first little chunk of 2009. Have a lovely rest of your day. See ya.
It's crazy